as you see here, we have 4 logos here. One is the Center for Disability Empowerment, in which I work for. To the right is a Chart in the Life course tools framework, which is going to be somewhat represented in this this time together. This is put together by a grant from the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities called Ohio Family Network. It's a great grant. There's 5 programs, 5 agencies involved covering 17 counties. If you wouldn't mind taking this time to turn off your, I'll just go ahead and mute you. Okay. All right. So who are we? The Center for Disability Empowerment is a 501c3 non-residential independent living center that's driven by choice and direction of people with disabilities. We also serve all people, all ages, and all disabilities. What we do, our mission at TDE is to provide support and resources for people with disabilities in order for them to be participants and contributors in their communities as they live, learn, work, worship, play alongside other people without disabilities. Excuse me. So what is a Chart in the Life course? It's actually a movement happening in the United States and elsewhere. It's a great way to help people when they're talking about disability-related ideas, thoughts, whatever, to have a plain language and a language where people can start conversations. So on the left here, you'll see a Chart of Life star is a trajectory. So we start here, that would be where you are. And then going up is what will make you a good life for you? And I will cover a slide right after this, but the whole goal for tonight is we're talking about safe, accessible housing. So the housing trajectory can be used as a planning tool. So if we put you here, on the left, you are here. And anyone can ask you, what is a good life for you? So it would be anything that brings you joy, what you dream. This is just a safe place to share your thoughts. For the sake of tonight's meeting, we're going to be talking about safe, accessible housing. And with a trajectory, you have a place where you don't think it's a good life. So sometimes people write down what they don't think is a good life so that they can know what is a better life. So with that in mind, I'll go to the next slide here. So tonight we have 5 different agencies represented. So from the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities is Ms. Jeannette Welsh, Housing Manager, Residential Resources. Then we have on the far right, Ohio Housing Finance Agency with Mr. Kevin Clark, who is the Project Portfolio Manager and the Ohio 811 program. In the center, we have the logo for Franklin County Board of Developmental Disabilities. So we have Mr. Jeff Pattison, Assistant Director of Service Coordination on this meeting. And then we have Ms. Critty, Buenconsejo, who is the President and CEO of the Creative Housing and Creative Renovations organization. And last but certainly not least is Ms.Rachel Rubey, who is a Supportive Services Director with Community Housing Network. So we have a bunch of people in here with a lot of experience, but we also will have 3 people who have lived experiences and have benefited from these programs. So we have 3 people who have lived experience and agreed to share their journey towards their safe housing. So there you go.
Okay. Okay, so let's see if I can make it go forward. Okay, is it changing for everybody? You see our CHN mission and vision?
Rachel, do you want to put that slideshow, click on slideshow and then current slide?
Oh, that's what I did. You can't see it?
No.
Nope. So I tried to do that. I had it up on a slideshow for me, but it
No
looks like
worries.
it doesn't work. You don't see it like that?
No, but you know what? It's fine.
Okay. Okay. Um, so just to introduce myself, I'm Rachel Rubey. I'm with Community Housing Network. And just to introduce Community Housing Network to you, I thought I would share our vision and mission. We believe people thrive with equitable opportunities, support, and communities that value them. And our mission is to create homes that provide residents with the support, stability, and community connections that they need to live and thrive. So to begin, CHN, we have just over 1,200 individual units and just over 1,800 household members within those units. For the vast majority of the apartments that we have, to qualify for the unit, you must have a disability. So we only have actually one portfolio of 101 units where we can house you even if you don't have a disability. So our focus is and has been working with people with disabilities. The other thing to consider when we're talking about who our tenants are is that most of them are exiting homelessness, have experienced homelessness, or they are at significant risk of becoming homeless. So we are working with people who have disabilities and are experiencing homelessness. Our tenants also, to qualify for both the unit and the subsidy, they must qualify as low income. And most of our tenants actually have extremely low income. The average income at move-in is $4,680 per year. And then you can see for our current tenants, it goes up to about $8,000 a year. But as you can see, that doesn't give you enough to live on. You can't find safe and affordable housing without a subsidy on that kind of annual income. So all of our units are subsidized, where the tenant pays no more than 30% of their income. Let me just scroll down here. I think this is always interesting to talk about how the race and ethnicity of our tenants, just because I think it's one more way that we can see how systemic racism impacts homelessness and poverty. So we do see with our tenants that Blacks are disproportionately represented in our housing, simply because of issues they face in trying to obtain safe and affordable housing. So CHN was actually founded in 1987, and it was the result, I'm sure many people on this call know, but for a long time in this country, people with disabilities were really left in institutions and not integrated into the community. And so there was an effort to move people out of really inhumane conditions of institutions and have services and money follow the people out into the community so they could live more full lives. And so CHN was really created as part of that idea in 1987. In particular with the state mental health hospitals. So there was lots of people who were leaving state institutions and had no place to live. So the Franklin County Adam H. Board created CHN to be the housing partner. So we've been doing this for a long time. Our model has changed over the years, but that this is how we began. So. One of the things that has changed is, in the beginning, we really were providing housing, and the idea was that the community mental health centers that were also coming up around the same time would be providing services to our tenants in their units. So our focus was really more on that time as we were buying a lot of properties, apartments throughout Franklin County, and developing housing for people that didn't have housing options. So just gonna scroll through here. The other thing that impacted our housing model is in the same, one of the things that this deinstitutionalization created, unfortunately, was a significant number of people who could not access safe and affordable housing and ended up homeless. And so in the late 80s, I think you started to see a lot more awareness of people who were experiencing homelessness. And so in 1992, the federal government started designing programs or creating legislation and funding programs to address what we were seeing in terms of homelessness in the country. And so we, at that time, started working not only with the Adam H. Board, but also started working with providers who were addressing people, the needs of people who are experiencing homelessness. And then in Columbus, the continuum of care was established through the Community Shelter Board. And so at this point, all of the homeless programming that you may encounter in Columbus is really funneled through the Community Shelter Board. And as that system has developed, the housing model has changed as well. And so where we started off buying smaller apartments throughout Franklin County when we first began in 1987, from the late 90s onwards, we've started building larger buildings. We call it permanent supportive housing. We have a model where there are services available on site to tenants. And it's really what it has offers people is really a housing continuum so that we can have different housing models to meet people's needs. So if you look at the far right, we've got independent housing where we started, where there are apartment buildings that are just like any other apartment building in the community. We've got a service enriched housing model where there are more services on site. And then we've got what we call a 24/7 supportive housing model, which is the most supportive housing model that we provide. Let me show you a picture of one. And this model, what we have is contracts with service providers, so people can access mental health treatment, physical health treatment. A lot of times we contract with people who have healthcare clinics or have a nurse that can visit. We have people who can offer substance abuse treatment, employment services. All of that is available for people who are interested in accessing those services. None of the services are required for the housing, but they are available. And then we have a front door that is staffed 24 hours a day. So only tenants can come and go freely. And it just provides sometimes a little bit more structure for some people and more security having a secure front door. The service enriched model is similar to the 24/7 supportive housing model, except that the front door is not monitored like that. Again, tenants can come and go as they want, but we do have a resident manager that's on site, and that person will typically be available to tenants maybe some evening hours or on the weekend. So when the service providers aren't there, there is some additional support for them. And then our independent housing model, like I said, are just individual buildings throughout the community. The services that to assist people at our independent sites are primarily case managers from community agencies that, we have services within CHN on a limited basis to provide support. So somebody can certainly always reach out to us if they're having difficulty. But we also would want to connect them with ongoing case management if that's something that they think that they would benefit from. All of our housing, whether it be the 24/7 through the independent housing model, the tenants sign a lease with the same rights and obligations as anyone else signs a lease. So they get to, they are responsible for paying their rent. They're responsible for being a good neighbor. We can't make them do things that that any other landlord cannot, ask of you. So if I thought somebody would benefit from case management, I don't have any right at CHN to say that that's required for the lease. That would be a violation of their rights. So, it's an opportunity though for people to have supports if they want it. And then probably the thing that is the most eagerly people would want to know is how you get into CHN housing. And we really have three primary routes. So for Adam H units, Adam H is still, what we try to do is integrate people, take people out of more restrictive environments and move them into more integrated community environments. So talk about that. We also have some buildings where there's a HUD wait list, and so you can contact CHN and ask, when we have wait lists open, and people can sign up, and then we contact them when we have openings in those units. And then that third was the continuum of care referral. So for people who are experiencing homelessness in the shelter or living outside, we get referrals from the community shelter board system. So I'm kind of skipping around. I've already kind of told you this, but for Adam H, there are some acute care facilities and residential care or group residential group home settings where the idea is that those are a more restrictive setting, and we'd rather have people live in their own apartments and have the services they need. So we work with Adam H and those acute care and group care or group homes to move people into their own apartments. And then we also get referrals from case managers for tenants that, or for their clients who might be experiencing homelessness as well. And then for the community shelter board, even though we might have somebody who is working with maybe an Adam H case manager, if they're in a homeless shelter or living outside, they may get referred to CHN through a different route. So, different systems fund different units. And so for those programs, they work with a rapid rehousing case manager, and the community shelter board will prioritize people based on the length of time they've been homeless. So the longer somebody has been homeless, the more priority they have for being housed. And then also the level of their service needs. So people with more barriers to obtaining and staying housed are a priority for housing in that system. And so really for people who are wanting to access permanent supportive housing, that 24/7 model, it matters what system you're coming from, because that is the person who you have different entry routes. So like I was saying, if you are someone who is in a shelter, then you want to be working with the shelter case manager or a rapid rehousing case manager to access housing. That will open up units to that person potentially. And the same thing with Adam H, in the sense that if someone is in a more restrictive setting and we're trying to integrate them into the community, they access those units by way of their Adam H case manager. And I think that is the end of my slides. I'm hoping you all saw that. And I can wait for questions whenever and pass the baton to the next speaker.
So what I was thinking is maybe, first of all, do we have access to this PowerPoint? Because you have a lot of good information on it.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it if you, if that would be helpful. I meant to include, I'll give you anybody my email address. You're all welcome to email me if that would be helpful. And you can hold on to it. And if you have a housing question, I'm happy to try and answer your questions at that time. So my email is rrubey@chnINC.org.
But we could talk
Okay,
about that
that's what I
later.
was, okay, good.
Okay, here we go. The end of the poll. I'm going to share the results. So we have a lot of family members in SSA on this call. And it's interesting, there's a lot from the Central Ohio area and other Ohio counties. That's excellent. And let's see, your ethnicity, predominantly white, Black, African American, and Hispanic. And are you personally looking for low income housing? A few said yes, and most said no. So that's good to know who's listening to this. Thank you so much for taking that poll. All right, I don't know what this share results is. Okay, so we're going to go on to our next person, and our next person is Jeannette Welsh, who is the Housing Manager of Residential Resources with the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. As she's working alongside with Mr. Kevin Clark with the Project Portfolio Manager, Ohio Housing Finance Agency, and the Ohio 811 program. So I will go ahead and let you guys go forward with that.
Thanks, Deb. Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting us to this conversation. And obviously, we're shifting things over from the mental health and substance use side to developmental disabilities. Kevin and I are sort of tag team this. I'll go ahead and start and then hand it off to him. But, you know, it's my understanding that we've been brought here today to talk about housing opportunities for people in Central Ohio with developmental disabilities, but we're going to take it a little broader, obviously, since we both work for the state and we both work statewide. And I don't probably have to say much about this, but anyone who works with or has to assist individuals with locating housing, especially people with disabilities, knows that finding housing isn't just a matter of locating a place to live. Things that Rachel talked about are also true with our population. Affordability, and then of course accessibility, in our case services, are also, you know, very, very important issues. And also just having access to community amenities, transportation, and even internet service are things that are important to the individuals that are served through the various boards around the state. You know, affordability is a big one. I think Rachel already talked about the fact that many of the people that, you know, are served with disabilities are very or extremely low income, which is the HUD definition. And that is also true with our population. To give you perspective, a lot of the individuals that we work with are on supplemental security income, or SSI, which is currently at the level of $841 a month. And so making housing affordable, you know, can be difficult, and it often requires that individuals have a roommate or a subsidy, and they may have to have both. A lot of people end up living with their families. And, you know, when you factor in both affordability and accessibility, you know, this can become doubly difficult to try to come up with a solution for someone that checks both of those boxes. So I'm just going to focus on the programs that DODD operates that are meant to address gaps in our system. And I'll talk about, you know, how you can access those programs. And then, you know, just kind of letting you know, I'll talk about some of the community resources. And then Kevin will talk about some of the interdepartmental or interagency work that we do together. So our department, the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, has had a program called the Community Capital Assistance Program for over 30 years, very similar to what happened in the mental health field. Deinstitutionalization gave way to, this was one of the impetuses for the Community Capital Assistance Program. And our capital assistance program provides funding to both boards and nonprofit housing organizations focused on the DB population to build, buy, or renovate housing. Most all of the Ohio counties in this state have tapped into this type of assistance, and that's certainly true in Franklin County. And I'm sure that both Jeff and Critty will talk further about that. More recently, so only in like the past 5 or 6 years, DoD has operated a small rental assistance program, small but mighty. And it was important because at the time that DoD launched this program, they did so to sort of echo, or I guess pair some of the efforts around the state around money follows a person or home choice. So people leaving nursing home care, other types of institutional type settings, even hospitals. And, so that was kind of the Medicaid money follows a person program. Now for our department, it was mostly people leaving intermediate care facilities, again, in DCs. So the rental assistance program that we operate is targeted to individuals who are leaving institutional care, moving to the community on a waiver. That program has gotten a little bit more flexible since it was first started, but essentially it mimics a voucher in that it makes that rent, affordable for people who are, in that 30% area median income category by capping their contribution to 30%. And I will add one caveat to that, because a lot of times we are approached by people who are wanting to live in an apartment that's over the HUD fair market rent, and we do sort of go by the HUD fair market rent standards. So, we want to make sure that there's enough assistance for everyone who wants it. That said, there's room in that program to grow. So if you know somebody who is, who matches the requirements of this program, leaving an institution, moving to the community on a waiver, that would be something you might want to talk to your board about, or you can even just look on our website, and I'd be happy, I'd be happy to talk with you too. The next program I want to highlight is one that is not run out of our office, which is the Community Capital Office, but rather it's run by our colleagues. And I mention it because, like the rental assistance program, it doesn't always get as much buzz as the Community Capital Assistance Program. And this program is known as bridge funding. And bridge funding is flexible funding that is available to individuals leaving institutional care on an exit waiver. It would pay for things like household goods and services, fees, security deposits, things like that. So together, these three programs are, again, meant to address some of the gaps around, housing. Of course, we are very well aware that it doesn't do all of that. And I'll just touch upon, because I know I've got, Critty and Jeff following us. I'll just say that, you should always be checking with your county boards and their nonprofit housing corporations to see what resources they have. Another player, obviously, is the Public Housing Authority, very vital when it comes to addressing the housing needs of each community. They too are focused on that extremely low income population, not just people with disabilities, but all Ohioans. Sometimes they have preferences for people with disabilities. And a lot of times those preferences are created because of the relationships that are built between boards or advocates and the housing authority. So Public Housing Authority should be made aware that individuals with developmental disabilities are a target population that has need. So Public Housing Authority, every county in Ohio has a public housing authority that serves their community. That doesn't mean that every county has its own public housing authority, because some of these agencies, serve multiple counties. But one of the things that they do is they offer an array of different housing programs, including public housing, portable housing vouchers, which we call housing choice vouchers, formerly called Section 8 vouchers. Some of these vouchers are specifically targeted to people with disabilities. These are known as mainstream vouchers. And sometimes these housing authorities will do requests for proposals or RFPs to try to project-based vouchers to nonprofit organizations who are looking to provide subsidy within their buildings. You know, obviously portable and tenant-based vouchers, portable and project-based vouchers can be used in the community to reduce rents and make rent affordable. But sadly, and I think most people know this if they look at the wait list for these housing authorities or, housing choice vouchers, that often the need for these resources outpaces the availability. The statistic that we often hear is that 1 in 4 people who need a housing choice voucher get one. One other thing I just want to mention, and that is that there are some project-based housing opportunities that are out there in Ohio, and these are not run by housing authorities. Rather, they're run by nonprofits. These are buildings with built-in rent subsidies. So unlike a public housing offering that you would go to the public housing authority to apply for, with the project-based housing, it would be at the project itself where you would make an application. If you go to DODD's website and you just do a search for housing, you should get to our housing page. There is a search locator called the Ohio Housing Locator. And I think it's one of the best tools for trying to look for housing, and you get to look, you can look by zip code or different ways. So that's a really good resource for both SSAs, family members, people with disabilities who are out there looking for housing. The last option is really kind of, it doesn't belong to me, and that is, we wanted to provide an opportunity for the Housing Finance Agency to talk about, what they do on the affordable housing scene. Obviously, I think Kevin's going to talk about how you can use a voucher in a tax credit project. And he's also going to talk about some of the programs that we do together, demonstration programs, as kind of an interagency collaboration. And then, of course, I think we have a tenant joining us today who will talk about his experience in one of those programs. So sorry to talk so fast. I know we've got a lot of speakers today. I'm going to hand it over to Kevin.
All right. Thank you, Jen. And thank you, Deb, for the opportunity to come and speak to this group this evening. Again, my name is Kevin Clark. I'm with the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about what our agency does in terms of affordable housing. I'll talk about the low-income housing tax credit program, which is the main way that we have to have affordable housing built all around the state of Ohio. And then I'll talk in some detail about the Ohio 811 program, which offers rental subsidy for extremely low-income individuals with a disability. The Ohio Housing Finance Agency, we're commonly known by our acronym, which is OFA. We facilitate the development and financing of low to moderate income housing across the state of Ohio. Our programs help first-time homebuyers, renters, seniors, and people with disabilities, among others, to find quality, affordable housing that meets their needs. To do that, we fund competitive fixed-rate mortgage loans for home buyers, and we provide financing for the construction and renovation of affordable apartments through the low-income housing tax credit program.
My name is Chris. What is the passcode to get in here? Because I'm trying. I apologize. I'm extremely sorry, but I've got people from CMHA that want to come in and join this, and they don't know the passcode.
Okay, I'll be talking to you on the side, Chris.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks.
I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me talk a little bit about the low-income housing tax credit program. This is our main way to increase the supply of quality, affordable rental housing. And we do this by providing a federal tax credit to real estate developers. And that helps to offset the cost of building affordable apartments for individuals with low incomes. This particular program has been the largest driver of production of affordable housing in the state and across the nation over the past several years. Since the program began in 1987, OFA has used this tax credit to facilitate the development of over 100,000 affordable apartments in Ohio. And I wanted to mention that program because that leads me into the Ohio 811 program. This is a project-based rental subsidy program that was funded by HUD, and it's designed to expand the supply of affordable housing for low-income individuals with a disability. This program provides a rental subsidy to individuals to live at properties that were built using the tax credit program. We have received 2 different grants from HUD to fund this program. The first was received in 2015, and we received our second grant this year to be able to provide more apartments for individuals with a disability. The program itself is my agency, OFA. We applied for and received the grant, and we also work with the Department of Developmental Disabilities, the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, and the Ohio Department of Medicaid to bring the program to those who need it. The target population for the 811 program is extremely low-income households with at least one member who has a disability and is able to live independently in the community in an integrated setting. This is important because the developments, the apartments where this subsidy is available are for the most part available to the general public. And usually on average, about 10% of the units in participating apartment complexes are available to the 811 program. Now, the qualifying individual must be at least 18 years of age, but less than 62 years of age at the time of admission to a property. If an individual turns 62 while they're participating in the program, then he or she may continue to live in their apartment and receive rental subsidy. The program is disability neutral, so this may include a physical impairment, a developmental disability, mental illness, or a combination of these disabilities. The household income to qualify for the program may not exceed 30% of the area median income adjusted by household size. To give you an example, in Franklin County, the maximum income that an individual person can have to qualify is $17,650 a year. If it's a 2-person household that's going to be qualifying, the maximum income is $20,150, and it goes up a little bit for each additional person that's living in a household. A household will pay 30% of their income toward rent, and then the rental subsidy through the program covers the remainder. In order to access the program, an eligible individual is placed onto our statewide waiting list by a referral agent. And I'll talk about referral agents a little bit more in a moment. When they're placed on that waiting list, they select up to 5 counties where they would like to live. Properties are currently located in 35 counties across the state, and we'll have more locations coming as we add properties under our second grant from HUD. The apartments are available as construction is completed or as existing residents move out of existing units. Now, a referral agent is the person who's responsible for identifying eligible individuals who'll be a good fit for the program. They assist the people with the application process in order to, when they complete an application, to live at a property. And they also verify that each individual is linked to any services and supports that are necessary for them to live independently. A referral agent must be approved by one of the 4 agencies that administer the Ohio 811 program. Local boards of DD, boards of mental health, organizations that are contractors of the Ohio Department of Medicaid, and other organizations that serve disabled individuals may become referral agents. We do have the individuals who act in this role complete an online training course in order to begin placing people on the waiting list. Now, as Jen mentioned, we do have a second program that's very similar to 811, and this is called the Ohio Department of Medicaid Subsidy Demonstration, which we refer to by the letters ODMSD. Now, this is simply a smaller sister program to the 811 program. The program only has 28 units located in 8 properties around the state. To compare, the 811 program currently has 74 properties committed with a total of 472 apartments. The target population, income restrictions, and referral process are all the same. The difference is that under ODMSD, all of the units are designed to be accessible. So that's the prepared comments that I had for you. And now I understand that we're going to go on to Chris Nichols, who is one of the residents in an 811 unit, and he's going to talk about his experience.
Well, I think before, it looks like Chris stepped out. I am a referral agent for the Ohio 811 program and have been, I think, over 4 years. I don't remember, but what is amazing, when the pandemic hit, I thought for sure we would not be moving people, but we did. I mean, it's an amazing program. And so I met Chris Nichols probably, I think, like 2.5 years ago, because it took a while for his name to come up. But I'm going to go ahead and ask Chris to unmute himself and kind of share that journey until he moved in, and take it from there. All right, Chris, it's all yours.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Deb. Deb Petermann. And you are you took me out of an absolute place where I was in hell. I was an addict and alcoholic. Oopsie, whoopsie. I don't know. I'm trying to get my screen bigger. But anyway, Deb, I had a friend because of Alcoholics Anonymous that turned me on to you. And he said he could not give you his name. He asked me that I would not give you his name. But anyway, I called you, and you decided after talking to me that I needed a change, because I was in a rooming house in Columbus on Main Street that was basically for felons. You helped me get out of Columbus and into the Windsor Manor at Marysville. And I am just so grateful for you. And I'm so happy. And I'm grateful that you did that, because you are doing what God could not have done for myself. So grateful for you, Deb. But what happened was I've lived here for almost a year and a half. I came in October of 2021. 2020. And 2021 was my 1 year anniversary. And here. And I'm just grateful. This is the most beautiful apartment that I have ever had. And it's all because, well, what you got to do. I mean, for me, I had to change my ways. Again, I had to change my behavior. Stuff old has been, but I lost 30 pounds in the last year, and I just had to go to the doctor, and now I've got some shit.
Chris,
You want me to shut up?
No. Chris needed a new start. and he was willing to move out of Franklin County. Everybody on the Ohio 811 list
Oh, yes, yes.
wants Franklin County, so he was willing to take that step. But we did go ahead and did some homework. We found out some local AA meeting locations. I mean, we checked the whole hood, didn't we? And he has a place for his cat Archie to be happy and healthy.
Okay. I'm sorry. Well, I don't know where he's at right now.
But just having the success that, you know, Chris moved out of just a rooming place. I mean, the bathroom was down the hall, a shared bathroom. It was not a very healthy situation. I'm really proud of him too. So thanks so much for sharing.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you, Deb, for being my
Your
my
friend.
savior.
We're no
You're
savior,
my
please.
savior.
No, there's
For
only one
getting me
savior,
here.
and it ain't me. Trust me.
Oh, the hell it ain't. Well,
All
you,
right.
that okay. Oh, already. All right, Missy.
Okay,
I'll
thank
shut
you
up.
so much, Chris, for sharing. Stay
Love
on
you.
for the Q&A just in case, okay?
I can't see.
All right, so we are moving to Jeff and
I need
Critty.
to shut up.
Oh, just for a little bit.
The slides.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Critty Buenconsejo is the president and CEO of Creative Housing and Creative Renovations. And she kind of works alongside with Jeff Pattison, who is the Assistant Director of Service Coordination for Franklin County Board DD. So I'll let you take it away.
Excellent. Thanks for having us. Jeff and I are actually going to be bouncing between each other throughout the presentation, so hopefully we won't cause any confusion. And I know that we want to leave time for questions, so I may be talking a little bit fast, so please let me know if it's too fast. And Deb, you do have a set of these slides, so anybody that wants them for future reference, please feel free to send them out. And just to say a little bit about Creative Housing. So Creative Housing, Creative Renovations has been around since May of 1991, and we provide safe and affordable housing for persons with disabilities. We are Franklin County Board of DD's Housing Corporation. We are a partner to provide housing in different settings all throughout Franklin County, and we also do accessibility renovations all throughout Central Ohio. So any county that touches Franklin County, we are happy to do accessibility renovations so people can stay in their homes and not go into any kind of institutional settings just because of disabilities and physical characteristics of the home. And real quick, sorry, Jeff, real quick. So there are people from other counties here. Creative Housing is just one of many nonprofit housing corporations that support county boards of DD. So pretty much most of the things that I will be saying, there are opportunities throughout the state, you know, with the county boards and their other housing partners.
Okay, so hopefully you guys can hear me. Good evening. Thank you again, Deb, and everyone for inviting us out. We are fortunate to have just a deep, rich relationship with Creative Housing, who really spearheads a lot of the effort to optimize and amplify what are, you know, limited resources out there, as Jen and Kevin and Rachel all indicated. So affordable, accessible, safe housing is what we're about here. We do that through a number of ways, both federal funds, state funds, local funds, and trying to optimize really the resources, much of which has already been touched upon. So I'm not going to delve too deep on this, except to say that you know, in totality, we're at about 1,800 units of some form of rental assistance subsidized housing, whether that's within the Creative Housing kind of portfolio of owned properties and assets, or whether that's private market landlord relationships that have been cultivated for decades, quite frankly. Our predecessors worked very, very hard to establish this over the last 2-3 decades. Additionally, you know, we are part of Technology First and renovation work, assistive tech, et cetera. And Creative Housing is one of our go-to partners in that space too. Again, trying to get out ahead of those ideas of kind of least restrictive, most normalizing housing options, and then ways to help people kind of age in place, or at least adapt locations over a lifespan, because we are privileged to serve people from age 3 through until end of life. Next slide is Critty.
Yep. So, and this is actually both Jeff and me. We, it's very important and for both of our organizations to be partners that are walking step in step with each other. We are not just a landlord, even though we provide housing. We are another set of eyes when we're in our houses, and we build relationships with the tenants in there as well. If we see something because we're in the house, sometimes our maintenance guys who see the tenants more regularly might notice somebody's gate changing, or somebody, gaining or losing weight unusually fast. We give a phone call to the county board and, let them know. So we're, partners in trying to make sure that, everyone is doing what they can to help everybody live their best lives. So on here is just kind of, a list of everybody that works together in our settings. And, if Jeff, you want to talk about housing priorities, person-centered service, how that all works.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, it really comes down to open lines of communication within the team. And so Creative Housing and their team over there really does a great job of highlighting those areas and anticipating sometimes things that we aren't always thinking with a housing lens. We're thinking perhaps a little bit more programmatically about how to support somebody to be successful. And, we really do try to tailor services to meet individuals where they are in a given community setting, and not just a housing setting, but in their community. So helping to work through, sometimes community outreach issues, or working through homeowner associations, or occasionally there's just some education that has to take place. I mean, I think you guys have heard that term NIMBYism out there, and that's something that I think Franklin County has struggled with historically in an affordable housing area, is how to help people understand that everybody has a right to be out living in the community. And we just want to wrap them around with supportive services to safely engage there. So a lot of those are tenants that are within DODD rules for our service coordination functions. So we try to make those manifest in the arena of housing as well. So I apologize, I've got a fair amount of acronyms here. CH means creative housing. So one area of focus, of course, is supported living homes. And similar to what Rachel was describing, the mental health Adam H space, there's a continuum of housing supports that have been developed over time that are really needs-based and meant to meet the individual, again, that person-centered approach where they are. So it could be from a 24/7 type of living with a couple roommates with maybe some assistive technology and some in-home supports, right down to kind of periodic intermittent supports where somebody's dropping in and providing kind of ancillary types of things. We braid funds whenever possible and try to offset costs. So locally funded, we do a lot of subsidized work and working with private market landlords, like I mentioned. And then also very, very similar to what Rachel and Jen and others described, is optimizing our Metro Housing Authority work. So utilizing Section 8 mainstream vouchers, both project settings for creative housing sites, for homes, but then also individual vouchers that people that are portable and you can take to different settings, as well as Ohio 811, we're referral agents for that. This bottom one, local programs, is ever expanding. I mean, I feel like every week something new comes up. There's a lot of resources, I think, out there that are perhaps a product of the pandemic, or perhaps things that have been in process. Just a couple of things I'll list off is there's some funds called residential state supplemental funds, typically coming out of the, again, mental health, substance abuse arena. Those funds can be used to help find subsidized housing, pay rental deposits, help in a number of ways, furniture and otherwise. Additionally, there's a new resource I just heard of a couple months ago called Multi-System Adults funding, which does a similar function and is funded through, again, Southeast Mental Health Center here in Central Ohio. that gives people, again, support for when they're trying to discharge out of a hospital setting. And then finally, like Rachel indicated earlier, some of the unified supportive housing system resources that are out there through Community Housing Network, National Church Residences, kind of funneled through Community Shelter Board. We also have served for quite a while for the Rebuilding Lives Funding Collaborative, now called the Continuum of Care, through the Community Shelter Board. So we try to work closely with our partners there to optimize resources and partner wherever possible.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about what different type of landlord scenarios you might be looking at as you're looking for housing. A nonprofit housing corporation like Creative Housing, who's working in partnership with the County Board of DD, you know, we can provide both regular and single family homes and independent living settings. We also have licensed settings that we work with the county board on, and then we have HUD 811. So when you're talking about the Ohio 811 vouchers, those are vouchers associated with larger apartment complexes. We actually developed, own, and manage some smaller HUD 811 project sites that have anywhere from 8 to 10 units on a site. And we also work with private market rent subsidies. So that is when, like, Homeport is a great partner for us, that we have a few units set aside that we can use and house people affordably. And then we have some folks that are just, that the county board serves, that are just out in the private market, and they actually don't need very much help rental wise. But of these three scenarios, in Creative Housing owned homes, in private marketplaces where we provide a subsidy, and the private market, there's a beauty to working with a nonprofit housing corporation, because we are here to support you and your family, not necessarily just to gain rental income. So we will typically have a little more flexibility as far as leasing and you know, where we may or may not make exceptions. We lease at 30% of tenant income is rent. Same thing as a lot of the other affordable housing programs. And we tend to be very forgiving and flexible when it comes to financial challenges. So as Jeannette kind of mentioned, a lot of folks, their only income is SSI. If something happens, to that SSI, or if you have a job and you happen to lose your job, we are not going to start putting the pressure on if you can't make your rent payments, you know, right on time for a little bit. So again, in the private market subsidy program, so we as a housing corporation provide rent subsidies in the private market. So we don't have any say over other landlords' leases or their policies. But when other landlords know that we are here also supporting an individual in their community, they tend to also be a little more flexible and show a little more grace, because they know that ultimately that individual has both Creative Housing and Franklin County Board also supporting them. So we actually have a very rich partnership out in the private market because of that. A lot of our landlords really love having our folks out there as their tenants. Another thing that we do, and a lot of other nonprofit housing corporations do, is, you know, we're out there making sure that everything is okay. Some private market landlords, they might go in once a year to check on the place. They might not go in for years, depending on the kind of setting. We make sure to check fire safety every year. We check our furnaces to make sure that they're working every year. We change the filters. We do electrical inspections. One of the management team is in every house at least twice a year. And then we've got CMHA, the Housing Choice Vouchers, formerly Section 8, that does inspections regularly as well. So there's a lot of eyes on at our homes to make sure that everything is good. I also know that Franklin County Board has, they coordinate with providers to do a monthly checklist so that every month, they're walking through the houses as well because they're in the houses, and they, make sure to report anything back to us that might need to be fixed. The other thing that we do, so we don't do any kind of 24/7 in our multi-unit apartments. We don't do any 24/7 like security that the doors are locked and there's somebody at the front desk. But we do take safety pretty seriously. Again, the whole life safety thing, everything is up to code. We check all these things annually. We have fire inspectors that actually are licensed for fire safety that go through our units. And home security is a big deal too. It's one thing for everybody to consider when you are possibly living out in the community and you have some supports that come in and help. One thing that we had found was we found out that a lot of providers were making copies of house keys for convenience. So we found out that there at any given time could be 20 copies of a house key out there, and that's not very safe or secure. So, we took a look at different security systems from, high-tech Wi-Fi type of systems to low-tech, and we ended up using a low-tech. It's a Primus key that you see right there. You cannot duplicate these keys and machines. You cannot duplicate them if you go to a locksmith. The only person that has these blanks that work in our locks is actually me. So that's a security feature that we do. We always take into consideration those things. Sometimes we have families that want to put cameras up. We will accommodate that kind of thing. So again, as a nonprofit housing corporation partnering with the county board, there are a lot of benefits that can help you feel a little bit more comfortable. Just to kind of show what you could expect from housing corporations, any kind of house that you can think of. The house on the left is a historic home in Victorian Village in Columbus. We've got a lot of ranch homes so that you can age in place. We have duplexes. We have multi-units. So we have some 4-unit, a couple 6 units, and then 2 10-unit buildings are our largest. And so when I mentioned that we had developed, so we built HUD developments, we received over $7 million in grants from HUD, the HUD A11 capital program. And then I mentioned our private market rent subsidies. So these are properties we do not own, but we provide subsidies. We have an agreement with the landlords in these locations. They also allow us to go in and do annual inspections and fire inspections and all that kind of stuff. And they accept our subsidies and partial payments from the tenants. So this is where if you want to live in a big community and you want that big swimming pool or the community center, then let's go for it. We also have some respites out in the community. And then we have some other settings.
I'll just speak to that real quick, just in the interest of time, kind of outside the bounds of our creative housing, not-for-profit housing corp relationship. There are, of course, intermediate care facilities all over the state of Ohio. There's a statewide search tool, and the state has put out a great residential options kind of comparison pamphlet, help kind of walk people through the decision around whether an ICF may be a really good option. For a lot of people it is. I think here in Franklin County, we have almost 400 beds total, and that's not what's not including the Columbus Developmental Center that has 125, I think. So that's always an option to explore. You can talk with your SSA or service coordinator here in Franklin. We also work with many licensed, other licensed settings, licensed homes, which are run by providers. And so that can sometimes be a good option for people who maybe don't have the best financial history or income that might meet the eligibility for other subsidy programs. And so that's something that we can help you guys walk through if it's of interest. Provider controlled settings is something we try to steer clear of because we don't necessarily want to link providers with the housing component, but occasionally that occurs as well, where a provider has secured their own housing and it kind of comes as a bundle. So we try to work with those situations as best as we can. Ohio shared living is basically a scenario it mimics living in a family home. It doesn't mimic it, it is living in a family home where there is a rate structure for providing support within that setting. That's utilized around the state as well. And then we have a variety of other options that we're looking to try to just, again, expand the pool of affordable housing around Franklin County. And so Critty and her team are instrumental in any sort of capital acquisition monies to expand the properties, and then kind of focus on some gap areas that are identified. You know, one thing that comes to mind is there's a lot of multi-system youth that straddle, maybe have dual diagnosis, complex care, behavioral or medical needs. And so we work with Boundless and ViaQuest both on some multi-system youth housing options. We're looking to hopefully expand that in the coming year. Planning ahead. So just real quick, well, one thing I should say is I guess the presumption for accessing a lot of these housing supports, really all of them on this slideshow, is county board eligibility. So most of this, if you guys have not interfaced at all with our intake department, it's needs-based, and they'll walk you through kind of what the qualifying diagnoses may be under the age of 21, and then any sort of substantial need in a given kind of domain. There's some assessments that need to be done up front. Once you're kind of through the front door, we can start talking about kind of other timeframes and what the current needs and intensity of needs are. And then we talk housing. So preferred versus feasible housing, you know, we, again, limited options, but we have something called a residential options request process we go through, in which you kind of outline what people are hoping for. And we try to match that up as best we can with what the portfolio is of creative housing. We try to match up compatibility. I mean, it is almost like a dating site, so to speak. I feel like we're trying to match up various criteria. There's a bit of an art to it to try to find a good roommate match or roommates match. And that too can be on a continuum from, you know, people that are kind of cohabitating to people who, you know, we didn't know it, but ended up being best friends. They knew each other in high school and maybe played sports on a team together, lost touch for 15 years, and then they reacquaint through this roommate matching process. Provider selection for anybody that's involved with our waiver programs, individual options waiver, IO waiver, or self waiver are the waivers that we administer. And so we support with that provider selection, we being service coordination, and kind of help step through that process. Supportive funding. Yeah, again, I just wanted to highlight again the remote supports assistive tech piece. More and more, we're trying to lead with what solutions can we come up with that don't necessarily involve, you know, a person on site unless that's what's absolutely necessary. And so how can we use technology in a smart way and within the home environments to support people? For those that do not have Medicaid waivers, to help pay for some of this, we also have some locally funded community grants that can help if someone just needs, you know, a ramp for accessibility purposes, just needs a widened door, just needs maybe a Bruno lift to egress. Those types of things are things that we would consider here at the local level. And I think I'll skip the other sections there, Critty.
Yeah. So again, shameless plug, but for everybody that might have a waiver or need something on privately, we've been doing accessibility renovations for 25 years. So just kind of some of the things that we can do to help keep you at home. And the beauty of this is a lot of these kinds of things are actually paid for through the waiver. One of the things to also think about, we love these pictures. We have a gentleman that lives in one of our houses that he's in a wheelchair during the day and he prefers to crawl when he's home. So after talking to him for a little bit, we decided that we were going to sink his toilet right to the floor level. So that's the upper left picture. Lower all his hand controls for the shower right underneath it, you know, and we actually heated the floor for him as well. And the coolest thing about this is hearing him talk about how for the first time he has his self-dignity. He goes to the bathroom without somebody else helping him in the bathroom, you know, your most private moment. So I do want to say again to plug any of the county board nonprofit housing corporations, they're all through the state. We are more willing to do a major renovation like this in one of our homes than out there in the private market. So lots of possibilities there. We also do some technology. We've been doing technology for a long time. The picture on the upper left, we have at one of our apartments a service dog who actually the black box to the right of the dog is a higher sensitivity fob reader. So the dog opens all the doors throughout the building, and the dog actually lets itself out by itself to go to the bathroom whenever it needs to go, which is really cool. We just count on the staff to at some point pick up the dog poop so our mowers don't get it. But there's a lot of things out there.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt you here just to say we have 12 minutes left, and I know you have two women that want to share their experience with creative housing, but we also have a couple of questions in Q&A. I'm willing to go over 8 o'clock, but I just want to make sure we get to that point. And Critty, you said that you will have access to this PowerPoint, correct?
Yep.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for you guys sharing. And Jeff, do you want to introduce our two ladies?
Yes, I'm happy to introduce Rachel Barezinski and Amy Kirk, both of whom are currently living in a creative housing home, just to share a little bit about their journey, their story, their experience with this audience. Thank you, ladies, for being here today.
Thank you for having us. Well, I'm Rachel. I'm 33 years old. And when I was 17, I was actually shot in the head, leaving me with a traumatic brain injury, and therefore having a compromised short-term memory and lack of use and movement of the left side of my body. So since the age of 17, I had been living at home with my dad and stepmom. And then about a year or so ago, Amy and I, we met through creative housing, and we did an interview, and then we got together a few times, like for a cookout and to the zoo, and decided we'd be a good fit. So we moved into our house on Mount Holyoke Road and this past September, and it's been I've had a great experience. We have staff who's here 24/7. So it's so nice to finally have, like someone that, or a lot of people that I can count on and that I know are going to show up when they need to be there, and they're just very reliable, and the whole process was it was just done right. It was both of our first times moving out. I can't hear anyone. I can't hear anyone.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate sharing that story. I'm glad it's been a good move. Amy, did you want to add anything?
I'm 44, and I work at Goodwill. I've been there 5 years, and we have six staff, 24/7 throughout the night. And what else?
We moved into a nice ranch house in Upper Arlington, and we took our time. Amy met with, I guess, a few other potential roommates before she and I met. And then after we met, our families got together for a cookout and went swimming and went to the zoo. So we got to know each other before moving in, which was nice. It's like we were thrown into the wind without having any idea what we were getting into.
Well, it looks like you guys get along great. And Rachel, I do remember your story. So it's good to see you. I've talked to you a couple of years ago.
Well, nice to talk to you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. You think of anything else you can mention in the Q&A? I'm going to go ahead and do some Q&As, okay? So a first person said, if a person with a disability does not qualify for Board of DD service coordination anymore, how do they get access to these services?
We met through creative housing.
Yeah.
So in general, I guess my answer to that, we get that question a lot in our intake offices. If you're not county board eligible, we really have to link you up with the other community partners that are out there. So that's the typical kind of housing network, Unified Supportive Housing Group, of which Community Housing Network is one. There's a couple other kind of larger vendors that are out there that provide those housing supports. So we do routinely provide that linkage here.
And then Lori Kaplan asked about, can a family donate their family home to creative housing so that their family member may stay in the home?
So donating homes is a tricky little thing at the moment, because we cannot accept a donated home with conditions. So if the condition is that the family member is going to live there for the rest of their lives, that's an encumbered donation that we cannot accept. So that's one of the things. The other is that we coordinate everything through Franklin County Board. So any home that we have is actually also an asset of theirs. So with that comes additional financial commitments, and comes, you know, other things, and making sure that services can be provided, all that kind of good stuff. So we never just say, yes, we would love to, even though we would love to, you know, build out our portfolio. It's again, you know, a decision that's made in partnership with Franklin County Board. And we're happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, so someone asked, wondering if there are programs, vouchers, or waivers available, even if it only helps with a smaller portion of the rent, that allows a person to choose an apartment or house that is not part of HUD. Our daughter lives with us now, but we would like to find something close to us. For her safety, we'd rather have her not live in a low-income housing area by herself. We are in Claremont County. She's getting SSI, a smaller amount because of her income, has Medicaid waiver, works part-time.
I'll try to answer that. So if I heard that statement correctly, it sounds like the income is both SSI and wage income. And with that type of income, this person may qualify for HUD assistance. And I understand where the concerns come around living in a low income neighborhood or setting, but with a voucher, an individual gets to choose where they live. So even though it's a HUD resource, there is choice around where an individual can live. And then I'm not sure, Critty, perhaps you know whether maybe the nonprofit housing corporation that serves Claremont County might have additional subsidies that are not HUD subsidies. I'm not sure. That might be a good possibility.
Yeah, I unfortunately do not know for sure.
And the third question, in terms of access, do any, some, most of these creative housing units have roll-in showers? Question mark. Ceiling lifts. Is there an easy searchable way to know which unit do and don't have which accommodations, and if not, how does a consumer go about figuring that out? Thank you.
So I'll start, and I'm sure Jeff will add some detail to it. We do have quite a few homes. I'm not sure the percentage, but we do have quite a few homes that have 5x5 roll-in, you know, 0 transition showers. We have our largest shower that we have is actually a 9x10 for an individual that showers in a prone position. We currently do not have a magic way to search for accessibility features, but Jeff's outfit is working on something that's going to help service coordinators do that, and everything goes through service coordination. So
yeah, we're trying to improve on, I mentioned technology, the way in which we can quickly sort out criteria and various granular detail of accessible settings. So a shower, a bathroom, and have that available to the service coordinators to better inform and round out the conversations about what options may exist out there. So we're working with some data analytics and consultants to try to develop something for our 300 SSAs here to all at once kind of know what's available at a given moment in time, as opposed to kind of running everything as it currently exists. A lot of it is in our residential department and a lot of people's wonderful minds, but we've kind of outgrown that over time. So we're trying to share information in a better form. That answer the question, Critty? I'm sorry, I kind of digressed here.
Yes, no, it does. But in the meantime, we can still help. So, right. So if somebody, gets in touch with the residential team and they do that request through the residential team, we find out what accessibility needs you have, and we do it analog. We all talk about, okay, which houses do we have? But we can definitely still help. You don't have to wait till that magic program comes out.
And I did see a question earlier in the chat about, the roommate match. That function really does occur within the service coordination department. So that is something that we help set up to do introductions and kind of, as Rachel and Amy were talking about, maybe a barbecue while the weather's nice, or a pizza, ice cream, something like that, just to get to know each other and see if it's going to be decent compatibility to move forward.
Thank you. I have one last question. What does the availability look like now for the creative housing option? Are there waiting lists?
Unmuted.
I would say there are not waiting lists. So again, people that are looking for options, we did slow down like everybody did during the pandemic, kind of pump brakes because of the public health overlay. But there are, vacancies we're trying to fill, and it's a process for us to, again, try to find that match. So it's going to be a long, perhaps longer standing, successful housing outcome. It's not like necessarily Section 8 or some of the HUD wait lists where you get an opportunity and you fill that bed or not. I think it's more of a conversation and getting to know each other and determining if that's going to be a good residential option for somebody. So we're rocking and rolling here.